What's the biggest frustration for you? You know, folks, since your earliest days, you know, when you were wearing sweatsuits and medallions, which a lot of us were wearing these days, you know, challenge whether you know, are self-appointed, the self-appointed leader of Black America.
Well, you know, first of
like
all,
Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote that piece in the Washington Post, you know, questioning your leadership in Black America.
Well, first of all, nobody leads Black America. Nobody ever did. When in the 60s, when I was growing up, you had Dr. King, Malcolm X, Adam Clayton Powell, Fannie Lou Hamer, Thurgood Marshall, all at the same time. So I think it was absurd to even say that. You have me and you have a lot of others out here. And I have an organization that has a following and others have theirs. We meet, as you know, every Saturday in Harlem at the House of Justice with a public rally every Saturday morning for 26 years. I don't know any group that does that. So who do they think? They think I go out and hire people every week to come into the rallies? I mean, we call marches, we get thousands every time. So I think that's a little crazy. That's more wishful thinking or satisfying those that they know want to hear that. I think that the question becomes, in many cases, who are our critics speaking for? Every case that we have fought, whether it was Eric Garner or Trayvon Martin, they came to us. So why do people, if we don't represent a body, then why do people come to us? Why don't they go to who these people like?
Well, some would say you have the attention, you know. But,
I have the attention because I can put people in the streets.
Right. Media loves.
I'm not the only one calling march. No.
I agree. But people would say that much of it is the media says Al Sharpton is the guy. So when you speak, they're going to show up, right? But you show up to Ferguson and then they boo you, right?
Nobody booed me in Ferguson.
When you went to a rally, there was
never happened. That's because of fact. Never happened. Never happened. I challenged the guy on the air to tell me when I was.
So you've never come to a place where, and I know this because we worked on the book, right. And I remember sitting in your office one morning. It was like 5:30 in the morning because you get up way too early for most normal people, but it's why, you know, the early bird gets the worm, right? So we're sitting there and somebody did call you. I think it was, you know, was it the Jersey Turnpike situation or what? But we had this conversation about you not showing up unless you get a phone call. You're not chasing ambulances, and I can attest to that. And I thought it was amazing that, you know, that was your role. And I would fight with people over this. But I'm glad you brought that up because I want people to understand. Eric Garner happened, right? His mother called me. I was in Nevada. Right. I flew home. He got killed on the Thursday, chokehold by police. That Saturday, we brought her to the rally, and we brought 1,000 people out to start the marches in Staten Island. We marched the next week with about 8,000. I left that rally and got a call from a man whose grandson was laying then in the second hour in Ferguson, and he asked me to come help. And I said to him, through Reverend Toole, you know, our field director, I said, I'm in the middle of Eric Garner case. He said, Reverend, please come. I said, I can get there by Monday, because I promised to do something with the Garners that Sunday. They started a riot that night in Ferguson, Saturday night, after I talked to them, and Sunday night. I went in Monday, held a press conference with him, his daughter, who was Michael Brown's mother, and the father. We had a rally that night. We had another rally that Saturday. And then I preached the funeral, raised the money for the funeral. Nobody booed anybody. But they went through the whole scenario. First of all, the people that engaged in the violence in Ferguson were not an organized group. They were people in the neighborhood that was mad. But the white mainstream media wanted to project like this was this clash between organizations. It wasn't no organization. These were the kids in the neighborhood that got angry that their friend had got killed. A lot of the people that later tell the Ferguson story were not even in Ferguson, weren't even from Ferguson. We were called in by the family all the way through the funeral. So I asked the guy who came up with this, you were booed, how did I do the funeral with 5,000 people and lead the burial and all that? I mean, where were them? I mean, they want this whole fight because then we're arguing about whether you were this or that rather than the issue. Okay, and that's spot on. You know, I've been, you know, quite frankly, very honest, you know, because you know how we roll. And, you know, the struggle for me, again, is how do we get from here to there? You know, we've been marching, it seems, for 50 years. We got civil rights, we got a bunch of amendments to the Constitution, and that's great. You know, we can vote now, we can do a lot of things, but there's still, you know, a lack of buying power in our community. More store owners don't look like us than look like us in our communities. We spend $1.3 trillion. Some would say $3 trillion if you add the Spanish-speaking black folk, who they need to add themselves. But we spend a lot of money. We consume a lot, but have very little to show for it at every turn. Whether we're talking about health, education, we're at the bottom of the food chain. Right. So what's the gain from the marches? What's
and the answer is this: self-determination, owning our own businesses. We've been saying that long that we've been marching. We've been doing all of that a long time. We had Marcus Garvey before we had Martin Luther King. So why don't we all admit that none of it has worked? Let's start there. Because we like to talk about marching. We didn't start marching until the 50s. We were talking about self-help with Booker T. Washington in the 1900s. That didn't work so far either. So I think everybody needs to analyze on what they must do about what they represent rather than just saying, well, that ain't work, voting ain't work, and therefore we ought to go to owning our own stores. We said that in 1910 when we couldn't vote. So rather than our taking shots at each other, all of us need to perfect what it is that we do.
Okay, so Al Sharpton, Reverend Al Sharpton, 2018.
Yep.
What's your role?
My role is going to be dealing with protecting the voting rights and trying to get the right candidates out there that talk to the people.
Do you know any? Do we have any on the?
We're working.
Like, give us your top
well, I mean,
I'm
not ready to announce a slate, but we're working on that now, because I think, and let me tell you, it will be a state by state operation. The biggest mistake that I think was made is that we ran up here and we let the Tea Party and them take the state legislatures. And the state legislators determine policing, determine budgets. They determine how you draw the districts. Everybody's talking about the Democrats taking over the Congress next year. The gerrymandered lines done by the state legislators. Many of those hard right Republicans are in safe districts and doing exactly what they wanted because they drew those lines that way. Unless you can take some of those legislative seats next year, and all of them are up around the country. When the census is done again in 20, you will end up with the same lines drawn again. So our focus is going to be how we deal with local races, because the local races dictate a lot of what we have to deal with.
So that's your whole.
That's going to be my priority.
That's your priority.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're not going to announce any candidates that you're looking at.
No, I'm not going to tell them that I think that Karen Hunter ought to run for state legislature.
All right. You know that will never happen. We have different missions.